Everybody, this is Crystal Proxmire of Oakland County Times, and we're here today with Amanda Treppa, who is running for State Senate in District 10. How are you today?
I am well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. Can you just tell us why you've decided to run?
Yes, I decided to run because I realized that we need more people who've actually been through the systems, survived them, overcome them, because we know where the gaps are and how to make better policy. And I realized that in my now at least 3 years plus of doing advocacy, both in Lansing, but also on the national level on public policy.
What are some of those things that you'd like to work on if you're elected?
Absolutely. I mean, we've got a lot of things, a plethora, as anyone, when I knock on their door right now, or I'm like, do you have anything you want to see? They're like, where do I begin? Right. But a couple of those things right out of the gate, education is one that we really need to be able to focus on and fully funding public education. I'm born and raised Michigander. I'm from this district. It's Oakland and Macomb. And, I see the gaps from even when I went through public schools, and now my daughter is in public school. She's actually in special education. So that's really important to me about making sure that we have those resources, especially as the Trump administration, is slashing down everything, especially when it comes to special education. And healthcare is another one. There's a lot of things that we can do on the state level of expanding coverages. Again, with my daughter, she has asthma, and any person who has had to call 10 pharmacies to try to find a prescription, I think a lot of people can relate to that. There's things we can do to fix that on the state level. And also really trying to work on things like My Cares or single payer healthcare system to try to build that in the state of Michigan, as well as infrastructure. Infrastructure, Oakland County, we know it. We all probably time when it's about to rain and when we can drive out of our driveways and how that works, and expanding our sewer systems, but also keep replacing those lead lines and having to work with Macomb, because we know we've bumped into a lot of that. And as that's part of the district, that's going to have to be a lot of regional solutions. And then, of course, protecting all of us, our civil liberties, civil rights. That is actually what people say first at the doors right now, and making sure that they're taken care of and that they feel safe, safe in their pocketbook, and so much more.
Can you tell us a bit about your professional experience and some of the skills you bring to the table?
Sure. So I currently am the operations and people and culture director at Detroit Action. Detroit Action does socioeconomic justice work. We do that throughout the state, not just in the city of Detroit. And we do organizing work. You see us at a lot of the protests, organizing that for tenants' rights, environmental protections. And then we also have our public policy and advocacy wing of our organization where we go into Lansing, right? And we are having these meetings with legislators in real time, finding out things that are going to get in the budget or out of the budget, and how to make sure that we actually progress further. So that's how I've spent so much time developing those relationships, knowing all these folks across the board. And then I'm state bill director for the Workplace Psychological Safety Act, not only in Michigan, but I also work on it on the East Coast, on the Northeast states. And that's the national level of public policy, workers' rights, labor rights, which I got into after going through my own workplace abuse, through a miscarriage that I had while at work, and then a really tough pregnancy with my daughter, Cassandra, and really realizing how corporations see us as just a number. And how do you really combat that? And you've got to be able to fight them back through policy, through the law. So I have that. And then I'm also on the Local Officers Compensation Commission here in Royal Oak.
So, what are some ways you've been involved in the community?
Yes, well, like I said, I'm born and raised here, so it's the great part about running for to support both your homes, being born and raised in Macomb, now living in Royal Oak, Oakland County. I'm involved with my friends, whether it's moms to mom sales, anything we can do that uplifts us, particularly other moms and other parents throughout. And I do work with Moms Demand Action and End Guns Violence Michigan. I'm a really strong gun violence prevention advocate here in the state of Michigan because that is very serious. And then also something I talk about at length on this campaign and why I advocate for mental health is I encountered during postpartum depression alcoholism. So I'm a recovering alcoholic. And something I really strive for and work on is within that recovery community is helping folks find jobs and job placement. So they do have a background, employment wise and HR wise, and making sure they have the right resources. And in Ferndale is our central office for AA recovery. And so working on the hotline there and making sure to be able to reach out and provide whatever help people need when they're in crisis.
In this race, there is some competition in the primary as well as in November. Why should the voters pick you?
Sure. So there is competition, but I think I always say this, how you run your race is how you're going to run your office. So when you look at, all the support we have from mayor, city council, people throughout the district, that speaks volumes. And, you know, the disconnect that I always saw in Lansing when I went into the rooms trying to explain bills and how they would impact us was that a lot of the people who were in office thought what I was speaking on would be a philosophical or an ideology thing about having lived experience. And it's not a philosophical thing, it's reality. And when I speak on lived experiences, because that matters, right? And I also have the professional experience, but putting them together allows you to change systems and systemic problems that have been occurring since this country was founded. But in order to do that, you need to have us in the room. You need to be able to have people who have actually been impacted by these systems who can speak on it. If you're making policy about foster kids, why not have someone, Exhibit A, who was a foster kid in the room? If you're going to be trying to decide even more things about education, have someone who can call the teachers who were their teachers in real time, call their friends who are now in those schools. I can talk to my daughter's teachers. It's us having an actual seat at the table. And that is what I bring that's very different. And like I said, I've survived the systems, I've overcome the systems, but not everybody has. And that's really real. And it's going beyond, it's not identity politics. It's just the reality of I understand what it means to go paycheck to paycheck. I know what it's like to lose a job. I know what it's like to look at paying rent and saying, how am I going to make that work? And having to find a job and figure it out. And we need people who understand how high those stakes are because our lives are on the line in Lansing. And that's something I bring to the table, lived experience and the professional that allows us to go further.
If voters want more information about you and your campaign, where can they go?
TreppaForMichigan.com, or you can go on Instagram, Amanda Treppa. On TikTok, it is Treppa for Michigan. Also on X, I still call it Twitter. I know it's called X, whatever. There, Blue Sky, you name it. And if you do direct message, I am the one who receives it. So I will answer you in real time or as quickly as possible if I'm not out knocking on doors. But I will always get back to you. And you can also email our team directly from our website.
Perfect. Well, thank you for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.